Welcome into the Stampede. My name is Ryan Jones. No matter what time of day you're listening, whether it's your morning, evening, or in the afternoon, got those out of order, but whatever, let's keep rolling. Thank you for choosing to listen to my podcast. I hope you're having a fantastic day. I am here with my good friends Nick Romero and Ashton Young as my fellow co-hosts and my football fanatic friends, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to get that branded, football fanatic friends, on a t-shirt. That's going to be our branding, our official
Triple
merch
F.
coming out.
Triple F. Let's go.
Triple F. How you guys doing?
Great.
All right. Well, if you have not been following along, this is the series that we have been conducting the last few days. For the last week and a half, we here at the Stampede have been fixing the entire NFL. Today, we are going to be fixing the NFC East, which is widely regarded as the worst division in all of football. So this is going to be a lot of fun. If you haven't already, we just posted the NFC West. Go check that out. For those of you that are audio listeners, this is something that I failed to mention in the last few episodes. For those of you who are audio listeners, go check us out on YouTube so you can see the new graphics that we are putting together that we have spent a lot of time putting together. So I'd appreciate that. If you're new here, just give us a review. All feedback is appreciated. Let's get right into it. We're going to be going worst to first by record. And in this division, it actually kind of surprised me of the order.
They're all worse, but let's just go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're all the worst. So, let's get started with the Philadelphia Eagles, who went 4-11-1 and missed the playoffs, obviously. So I have their number one need as drafting Devontae Smith, but it's just wide receiver in general. I just assume that Devontae Smith would be there. If Jalen Waddle or Jamar Chase is there, those are also options. So number one should just say wide receiver, but I put draft Devontae Smith. If you're going to give Jalen Hurts a year, then you have to give him a fair shot to compete. Jalen Reagor, who didn't play that well last year, kind of like he was just kind of up and down. I think he could end up being a very good player in the NFL, but he's not a true number one receiver. So draft Devontae Smith, draft Jalen Waddle, or Jamar Chase. Just depends on who is there and who you prefer. All three of them are great options. So you're going to want to do that to give Jalen Hurts a fair shot. And all of them fit the Eagles offense very, very well. Number two, get Darius Slay a partner in crime. Slay is one of the elite corners in the NFL, but he has absolutely no help. If the Eagles could acquire a veteran corner to pair with Darius Slay, the defense here in Philadelphia might have a chance of being a little bit below league average, and that's kind of all we're shooting for, right? Number three, draft a starting quality linebacker. Draft or sign. This kind of depends on your preference here. The Eagles don't have one starting quality linebacker on their roster. I would name these guys, but I just never heard of them, and I don't want to because they're probably all going to be enjoying retirement this year. Your best bet is drafting Nick Bolton or Zaven Collins in round 2 if they decide to sign a big-name wide receiver, a.k.a. Kenny Galladay, who's out there. Then you could spend the number 6 overall pick on a Micah Parsons or a Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who is my number one linebacker in the class. Going to say that every chance I get, just to put it out there. The Eagles currently have negative $8 million, so you're going to have to draft all of these needs that you have: wide receiver, corner, linebacker, just all around. There's a lot of work to do in Philadelphia, and I don't see them drafting a quarterback here at 6 overall. Plus, I just don't think that throwing a rookie quarterback into the fire would be the right option for Philadelphia either.
Yeah, I agree, Ryan. I think for the Eagles, the main two things to improve, and kind of hit with 2 and 3 as well. One thing is getting weapons for Jalen Hurts. Obviously, they moved on from Carson Wentz. Jalen Hurts is the guy. I don't care what anyone says about next year's quarterback questions. I know that he was benched in the final game, but that was mainly because Coach Pearson basically forfeit that game. The Eagles had no benefit of winning that game against Washington in the final game of the regular season, so they pretty much just forfeit that game. But Jalen Hurts, in my opinion, is a solid quarterback. I definitely believe he deserves another year as a starter to show what he can really do and see if he can be a long-term quarterback for the Eagles. But he definitely needs weapons. And again, whether it's Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, Waddle, all good, solid options for the Eagles. And the Eagles, they're high enough in the draft to kind of just choose their picking. Number 2 and 3, they kind of go together. You just need to improve that defense all around. Darius Slay, he can't just be the only guy defensively. Now, the Eagles, they do have a good defensive line. It's actually okay. It's a little above average. But secondary-wise, they need help. Linebackers in coverage, corners underneath. Darius Slay, he's really doing all the work in coverage for the Eagles. So if you can just even get him like a solid, strong safety or a good free safety, that would make Darius Slay's life a lot easier for when he's playing for the Eagles. But yeah, getting weapons and just improving the defense, in my opinion, are the two things the Eagles do need to hit on this offseason, while also not blowing the budget.
Yeah, and I know that me and Ryan talked about this before. I think I mentioned it when we talked about the Patriots, but one thing we talked about was Stephon Gilmore getting traded there, so then the Patriots can move up to draft a quarterback. And I just think that would be perfect. Getting Darius Slay a partner in crime. If it was like Stephon Gilmore and Darius Slay is the number one corner, but Gilmore's better. And we all know if they have like 2 starting caliber number one corners, and their defensive line is really good with Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham, that defense, it doesn't take much to win this division. As we've seen, it doesn't. You just get a little better. You have stable quarterback play, and because this division's wide open. So
the only issue with the trade we discussed on, I believe it was the AFC East podcast that we did, go check that out if you missed it. The proposed trade was the Philadelphia Eagles trading down to pick 15 with the New England Patriots, while also acquiring Stephon Gilmore. The Patriots obviously had a quarterback need. I don't know if that's realistic anymore, just because they signed Cam Newton, what was it, yesterday or 2 days ago, as of this recording. So I don't know if the Patriots are still going to be in the quarterback market. If they were in the quarterback market, I wouldn't blame them, because Cam Newton, I don't think, showed enough last year to prove that he is a starting caliber quarterback. I mean, Ashton, in our free agency preview that we have not been able to record yet, had him going to the Baltimore Ravens to be a backup to Lamar Jackson, which kind of shows what career point that we perceive Cam Newton to be at, right? So I don't know if it's a realistic option for the Patriots to come up to 6 anymore. If they were to do that, I think that it would actually benefit them, but I just don't see it happening anymore, because the NFL seems to value Cam Newton a certain way that personally I do not. Move on to the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, as some call them. They went 6-10 and missed the postseason.
Yes, and I still don't know why they're America's team, but that's just what everyone calls them. They were 6-10, missed the playoffs. I believe if Dak stayed healthy, they probably win this division. They go to the playoffs, but Dak got hurt. The number one need is just secondary. They were getting torched all year long. They lost Byron Jones. They drafted Diggs out of Alabama, which is a good start. So I think this year in the draft, they need to go Patrick Surtain or Caleb Farley if they fall. J.C. Horn too, if he's the one there, or if that's their number one corner. And free agency, they have $20 million, so they could spend some money on some quality starters. They don't need like a number one cornerback to be paying all that $20 million. But if they could get a couple quality starters, then because that would be the right move. Get younger along the offensive line. Probably 5 years ago, this offensive line was unstoppable. And they were all young and they were a little cheaper, but now they're getting old and expensive. And as you see, last year, a lot of them got hurt. Zach Martin, I think he played every position on the line last year. He played tackle, he played guard. I don't think he played center, but he was playing left, right, side, because everyone was getting hurt. So I think they need to start drafting for depth and also replacements. And they need to get someone opposite of DeMarcus Lawrence. He balled out last year or 2 years ago, got the big payday, and last year he didn't really show that he deserved it. but he's really the only guy on that defensive line. I mean, they got Aldon Smith, but he didn't play for like 4 years before this year. So you can't really expect much from him. So people were just doubling and triple teaming DeMarcus Lawrence because they're like, well, no one else scares us. So
when Aldon Smith actually played this year, he was actually kind of looking like his old self. But you're right, you can't really bank on Aldon Smith looking like he did when he played for the San Francisco 49ers and they had that Super Bowl run in which they lost to the Baltimore Ravens. You just can't bank on that. But if they could get Aldon Smith back for a cheap deal, then I mean I would do it, and I'd call him my number 2 edge rusher because I personally believe Aldon Smith's, one of those guys. He's just that dude. You know what I mean? You hit the nail in the coffin. Patrick Surtain would be ideal here for the Dallas Cowboys, just because they sing in number 9 or sing in number 10. Actually, Denver sits at number 9. And if he falls into the lap, then pair him with his old teammate. And plus, when you're a corner in the SEC, you are battle tested. He had to go up against Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle, just all these dudes, Jerry Jeudy in practice. That was just his practice, who he was going up against in practice in college. So he's battle tested, especially playing in the SEC. And number 2, get younger on the offensive line. I would do this. I think that it's a good idea, but is Jerry Jones going to do that? I doubt it. So.
Yeah, and I think Jerry Jones, he's an unpredictable owner in the NFL. There's times where we think that they're just going to get the best player available, especially since they haven't been in the playoffs, I believe, since 1995 when they won the Super Bowl, either 95 or 94. It's been a long time regardless. But with Jerry Jones, it just seems like for like the last 10, 15 years, it's just been all about drafting first-round offensive lines, paying them their tens of millions of dollars and from left tackle all the way to right tackle, and then just having skilled players work around them and just having a physical, tough team. They re-signed Dak Prescott, which did throw me off a bit. Knowing Jerry Jones, it seemed like the philosophy would have been to just get a quarterback that could do half the work for a quarter of the price. It just made sense to me, in my opinion. But they signed Dak Jones, which tells me that they are planning on being a little bit more aggressive this offseason. So I definitely think that it'd be great to see them get defensive backs in the first or second round, get some talent there in the secondary. Regardless, I do think they are going to somehow improve their offensive line. Jerry Jones is just not going to stop doing that. There's no way after doing it for so many years. Rather they use their draft picks or go into free agency to get somebody, I don't know, but they will invest something towards offensive line. And then, yeah, I do think that they do need to improve the defense a little bit. Obviously, if you get someone to complement DeMarcus Lawrence there on the defensive front, that'd be like so much easier. And again, you don't need much to compete in this division. So it's not like you have to get a solid defensive end. You just need someone that can just help create one-on-one matchups for DeMarcus Lawrence.
All right. Let's move to New York, Ashton.
All right. So I got the New York Giants, who, despite having a 6-10 record, had the second best record in the NFC East, which again just shows you how bad the NFC East is. Number one priority for me in regards to making the Giants a better team is get an offensive line. Your offensive line was already bad last year, and it doesn't help that they just released their guard, Kevin Zeitler, last week. So this offensive line is just bad. It's, if we think Kansas City's O-line's bad, this Giants O-line's probably worse. So figure it out. I don't know how. I know that they're still trying to save up some money because everyone's dealing with only 180-something million in cap space, but they just need to figure that out if they plan on winning games, rather it's through passing or the run game on offense. Number 2, listen to your scouts. And I know people are wondering, why is that even something that has to be addressed? Well, if you looked at how the Giants been drafting, it's just been weird. Like Saquon Barkley, he's a great player. He's a talented running back. He's definitely a game changer. But you can tell just based on where the Giants were, based on, how ticket revenue's been, that they just need a player that can just bring in fans. They were just desperate to get the best player available that year. And then the year prior, they got Daniel Jones, who, again, he is talented, but he wasn't, in my opinion, a first-round draft pick. And really, the big reason they drafted him was for sentimental reasons. You know, he played at Duke under the same head coach that Eli Manning had when Eli Manning was at Ole Miss. So this was just about getting Eli 2.0, and he even looks like Eli Manning. So it was really just more about getting another Eli who's just long-term stability, doesn't have to be a guy who's going to pass Eli Manning's records, and probably because of how much they like Eli Manning, they didn't plan on that happening anyway. It was just about getting a quarterback that can do their job and be coached the way Eli Manning's been coached. So I really think they need to listen to their scouts, actually get one, players that are best available in the draft, but two, players that they will fit under Judge's system. And, you know, they do have a new head coach, so maybe this offseason will be a little bit different. Maybe they'll actually get players that are competitive. But again, anything can happen with an NFC East team. And then number 3, which kind of just fits into number 2, draft the best offensive players available besides running back. You obviously took care of Saquon Barkley. He's coming off his injury. Assuming he doesn't get hurt again, you should be fine at running back. But just get the next best offensive player available in the draft. You know, if you're the whole team, whether it's an offensive lineman, rather it's a tight end, just get whoever's the best available because you're 6-10 for crying out loud.
Man, a lot of Giants hate today. A lot of NFC East hate, but I will say
I like
this.
the Giants too.
I will say this. I will say this. The Giants are trending in the right direction. We saw last year that Joe Judge, he's a good football coach. He knows what he's talking about and he knows what he's doing. The general manager here, Dave Gettleman, is a different story. A guy who just paid Leonard Williams just a little bit under $20 million for a defensive tackle who is not basically who isn't Aaron Donald or Chris Jones. I'd pay Chris Jones $20 million as well, but my goodness, that's a lot of money. Last offseason, they actually made some really good signings. They brought in James Bradbury from Carolina, who a lot of people questioned him, giving him $17 million. He was one of the best corners in the NFL last season. So at least they have a number 1 corner going forward. They have a solid starting caliber defensive tackle. And they brought in Blake Martinez offseason, who isn't great in coverage, but he's a good run stuffing linebacker. So they have some pieces there defensively, but you hit the nail in the coffin with the offensive side of the ball. They released Kevin Zeitler, and their offensive interior wasn't that great anyways. They drafted Andrew Thomas last year, who did not play that great. I mean, he at least improved throughout the season. They did draft Matt Pert in like the 3rd or 4th round, who I thought was a better tackle than Andrew Thomas last season. So the offensive line's kind of shaky, but I do have something pulled up on quarterback Daniel Jones. When kept clean, Daniel Jones has a 91.5 PFF grade, which on a scale of 0 to 100, it's very good. That's up in the upper echelon of quarterbacks. But when he was pressured, he has a 46.9 grade. So read into that whatever you want. You have to surround Daniel Jones with a good offensive line. People argue wide receivers in need. They have Sterling Shepard. They have, who's the other receiver? What is his?
Darius Slayton, I think.
Yeah, they have Darius Slayton as well. They have Evan Ingram at tight end. Look, if you just get some offensive linemen and keep Daniel Jones clean, good things will happen. A 91.5 is an elite PFF grade. So,
yeah, and you just mentioned right now about receiver. I would actually say that they should go with receiver in the draft because where they're at, I believe they're like around 11, and could be players like Jalen Waddle could fall, Devontae Smith. I mean, we don't know where these players are going to get drafted, and if like Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith is there, I think you take them. You know, their offensive talent is it's like all over the place. There's some games they played the Bucs and they almost beat them. There's games like that. They've shown that they can compete, but they're not consistent like at all. So I just feel like you gotta and it seems like they're gonna roll with Daniel Jones. It doesn't seem like they're in the quarterback market. I haven't heard their name being thrown out with all these quarterbacks trying to get traded. So I feel like they're gonna roll with him, and I just think they need to create the best offense possible because none of the defenses in this division are really that great. So you can you can put up some points.
And there's an argument to be had that the Giants have the best division or the best defense in this division. I know people want to argue Washington, but there's an argument to be had there. So Let's go ahead and move on to the Washington football team, the team I just mentioned, who went 7-9 and somehow made the playoffs with a losing record. Also lost in the wild card round to the Super Bowl champs Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so can't really fault them there. It was a great game, though. More competitive game than the Super Bowl, I might add. And that was because, yeah, and that was because of that man in the number one spot, Taylor Heineke. But unfortunately for him, I have them getting another quarterback just because I don't believe Taylor Heineke is guaranteed. Look, he has played 2 career games, and he had one fantastic game, which was that game against Tampa Bay, where he dominated for the most part. But look, they have to get just a backup plan. If you want to roll in to camp with Taylor Heineke as your starter, that's fine. I like him as much as the next guy, but you have to bring in a veteran just to stabilize the position. Originally, I had in my notes that Cam Newton would be ideal here because of who the head coach is, Ron Rivera, and because the offensive line isn't that good, so you want a more of a mobile quarterback. I've now changed that. I think they should try to trade for a Marcus Mariota from the Raiders. If you can get a 3rd round pick for Mariota, that'd be ideal. If you're the Raiders, Alex Smith is a free agent. He's not going to come back. I imagine he will sign with the Chicago Bears. Matt Nagy was his quarterback's coach, I believe, when he played for Kansas City. So, number 2, sign or draft another receiver to take the pressure off of Scary Terry. Scary Terry McLaurin, who is by far and away one of the most underrated and best receivers in the NFL. He's already proved to be an elite wide receiver. But without a viable number 2 option in his offense, he's always going to be I don't want to say limited because that's not the right word, but there's always just going to be that one thing holding this offense as a whole back. When your second best receiver is your running back, Antonio Gibson, who I'm a huge fan of, by the way. If you guys watch the podcast in the past, you know I love me some Antonio Gibson. Just spend the 19th pick overall on Rashad Bateman and call it a day, if he's there. And if not, you can go get Elijah Moore, Rondell Moore. You just got to get another guy in here. Number 3, find a long-term replacement for Trent Williams, who is the future Hall of Famer. We saw how bad the tackle position was in their playoff game against the eventual Super Bowl champions Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Him going up against Shaq Barrett, Ndamukong Suh. You just have to find a replacement at tackle. Sure, it makes for some great highlight plays if you're Taylor Heineke, but you just can't rely on that week after week. You have to find a replacement. This is one of the deepest tackle classes in a long time. So if they were to spend the 19th pick on a tackle or a guard, no complaints here. I would love Rashad Bateman here, but if you were to go offensive line in the draft, no complaints here. I think Washington, this is their division to lose now. If they could just do these 3 things.
Yeah, I really like the priority set here. I do think Heineke, because they did sign him to an extension, I believe, or even just gave him a new contract altogether. I think Heineke is definitely still going to be in contention as QB1 for the Washington football team. Not guaranteed that he'll be a starter. They could still do some quarterback moves this offseason, but they definitely have him to be in the quarterback room at least for this upcoming year. Scary Terry was a solid beast, and Antonio Gibson was a great player in the backfield. Obviously, having more weapons would make life easier, regardless of who's the quarterback, or rather it's Heineke or someone else. And then, yeah, you got to protect whoever is going to be the quarterback. Left tackle is definitely an issue for Washington. One of the biggest reasons we saw Heineke running around the way he did against Tampa Bay, but granted, at least he was able to create something out of nothing. But you can't rely on that week after week. So I like these priorities. I like Heineke, and I really hope that they find a way to actually get more players and weapons that will help fit around him, because he is a solid player.
Yeah, Heineke, I believe the contract is like 2 years, like $8 million. It's nothing crazy, and you can't really pay a guy that had one good game a bunch of money. But this gives them flexibility to put money elsewhere now, because if, let's say they roll with him and let's say he has an average year, the amount of money that they could spend on everything else could make this team take that next jump. It could, like we saw the Niners with Jimmy G. Like, Jimmy G's better than him as of right now, but we saw with the Niners having a stacked roster, you can make it to the big. You could go to the Super Bowl with a shaky quarterback. So if Washington is going to go that route, then I just hope that they just get the best players that you possibly can.
One more note on the Washington football team. They currently have 39, close to $40 million with the cap. So none of this that I've mentioned is out of the question completely.
Mm-hmm.
They have money. They have the money to spend, which is scary considering they won this division last year. So
They're just
with
young
that,
and
I'm going to
cheap.
call. Yeah. With that, I'm going to call it here for the Stampede. Thank you so much for listening to the Stampede. My name is Ryan Jones, along with my colleagues Ashton Yanez and Nick Romero. Whatever platform you are listening on, please do yourselves a favor. Do us a favor and subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Stampede. And please leave a review, like the video, comment. Just give us feedback. We want to know how we're doing here. All feedback is appreciated. With that being said, this has been the Stampede. We will see you next time.